Students, welcome to episode 24 of the Film Student Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Lazzeroni. My guest on this week's episode is a graduate of the program, Michaela Stewart from the Blue Cohort. We talk about her experience through all sorts of film schools, her favorite stand-up comics, and we discuss a particularly bad film set she worked on and what she has taken away from that experience. On with the show.
So I've been a film student forever, basically. I was in a film media program in high school, and I decided that I wanted to be a director. I did film undergrad. I got a BFA in film production at Chapman University.
Where'd you go to high school that you had a program like that?
I went to high school in the Silicon Valley.
Oh, okay.
So
Makes more sense now.
Yes, so we were part of this program called Freestyle Academy, and it was between the two high schools in my district, and it was an experiment primarily funded by Apple, actually, where they gave us a bunch of equipment.
I used to work for Apple, so...
Yeah. Well, they gave us a ton of equipment, and it was amazing. It was an alternative learning program, too, so... For a lot of us, we weren't doing that well in traditional high school because we were artists and
tortured souls.
Yes, we needed someone to have special English class for us and special film production. And so we did film production, we did photography, we did Photoshop and Illustrator. You could choose whether to do film production or web design or audio. I was in film production, obviously, and I was one of 5 of us that applied to film school. I was the only woman, and I was the only woman that got into Chapman, which was one of the Chapman and USC are the top 2 film schools in California. And there was there was so much sexism even in high school, which is it's not better. But Chapman was a really intense, awesome experience. Dodge College is the name of the film school there, which people have sometimes heard of more than they've heard of Chapman. And what happened after I graduated in 2014, and I worked for a minute. I actually worked on Dimitri Martin's film Dean. He came and spoke about it. It was an entertaining moment because I said that I'd worked on the film, and he had an outburst about how things were on set. He was very upset with his producers, and he expressed his upsetness to me in front of over 100 people at Second City. So
wow, what? How so?
Can I say?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I
it's up
guess
to
he
you.
said it to a bunch of people. Well, there was a Q&A, and I raised my hand and I said, "Hey," and he was there to talk about the movie,
right?
And I was like, "Oh, hey, I was a locations assistant in LA on your film," and he was like, "Oh my God, was it as bad for you as it was for me? It was such a mess. It was so bad. And my producer screwed me over." And he's just looking dead at me, going on. And the poor moderator's like, okay, so what happened?
He just needed somebody to vent to. He needed a friend.
He did. He needed someone to vent to. And it was so cathartic for me too, because I was like, oh, thank God he knew it sucked too. It was really, there was just a lot of problems with crew, and we just didn't, he was writing, directing, and producing. So he was the one that was in charge of everything, and he was clearly very overwhelmed.
This was 2014 or when?
2014.
2014. So
summer of 2014.
Trying to figure out if that was after In a World, because he may have seen, because he was on that set with Lake Bell when she did the same thing, wrote, directed, and starred in her own thing. So maybe he was comparing the two, because that sounds like it was a really good experience for the people that were on that film.
This one was it was an experience, certainly. We just didn't. One of the things that I learned from that set, and I'm sorry, Dimitri Martin, if you ever listen to this, I mean, that'd be dope. But what I learned from that set is you have to keep your crew happy, or you will have a goddamn mutiny.
Yeah,
and that is what was happening on that set. Everybody was miserable. He knew that it wasn't going well, and it's trickled down. So even those of us that were fresh on the set out of college, there were a few of us. Could tell things were going badly, and we saw that it was disorganized, and we were like, well, why should we care? And so one thing that on the one hand, it's I worked on this professional set and it was a disaster, but on the other hand, I left being these are a lot of things you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And also, you shouldn't try to film in LA without a permit, even if you're Dimitri Martin.
Yeah.
So
they will bust you anywhere. Well, and that's one of the things they tell us here too. When you're budgeting out, it's like the first dollars you spend should be on crafty. Like you're taking care of your cast and crew first and foremost. And like if the films that are working with micro budget, it's because they're filming for as free as possible and they're getting locations as free as possible. Everything else is just going into the cast and crew.
Yeah. Well, my senior thesis film in college. It was my senior thesis, my cinematographer's senior thesis, my producers, my editors. Like, it was a bunch of our theses, but I wrote and directed it. And it cost $15,000 was the budget. And people were like, what, for $15,000, like a student film, did you shoot it in space? And I was like, no, we had 50 people on the crew.
Yeah.
So we had such a tremendously large crew. Almost all that money went to food.
Yeah.
Food and, like, camera rentals. And that was really it. So anyway, I will get back to. So I worked on Dimitri Martin's movie, and that was great. Basically, then there was no more work to be had. I was living in LA. I really didn't like my roommates. I was really miserable, and I ended up just I had to go home because I had like jury duty or something.
Yeah.
And home for me is, as I said, the Silicon Valley. I live in a town called Los Altos. It's really close to Stanford University. I just ended up like not going back. Like stuff started to happen health wise for me. And that is kind of how I ended up at Harold Ramis. So I ended up spending close to 2 years out of the workforce for having chronic migraines and some pretty severe depression. And that's something I've dealt with my whole life. It's very public. I had to take time off of school, actually, even at Harold Ramis, to deal with some stuff with my medications, and I'm very open about it. It's it's a big part of my life. It's like having diabetes, essentially, in that your body doesn't make something and you have to supplement it. So I was having a lot of problems with my health. I was constantly having migraines, like constantly just a mess. I tried to move back down to Southern California to see if I could get some work. I interviewed at BuzzFeed. They were really nice to me, and then I waited a month, and then they called me, and I was like, "Hey, so like, how'd it go?" And they were like, "Oh, the position doesn't exist anymore." And I was like, "You filled it?" And they were like, "No, we're just not going to have it." And I was like, "Oh my God!" So that was sort of my experience going back. I was back living in Orange County, where I had gone to college.
Yeah. With
a friend, and then the migraines got even worse. So I had to go home, basically, and I spent a year working in theater. So that's the other thing I do. I work for the San Francisco Shakespeare Festival.
Okay.
My final film here is about that, pretty much. It's called Shakespeare Open Mic, if anyone has seen it or wants to watch it.
With Rachel Mason.
Yes.
In that one. I've seen yours, yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, there you go. That was my movie.
We saw like the second week that I'm here, we had Dax did a screening of all the blue. He did purple and blue, but I missed the purple one, but I got to go see all the blue final films.
Oh, nice.
So I got to see yours, and that was I think it was right after we had met Rachel for the first time. So it was interesting, like seeing what she's like in class, and then like what she was like as a character, and they were two completely different things. Like there's some strings between the two, but
well, she knew everybody in theater knows that person, and the character is based on a real person. All of those people are based on real people.
Rewrite what you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's that story. Let's get back to that, because I am curious to tell you the story of it. But so I was home teaching. I teach and direct Shakespeare with kids. I work for Los Altos Youth Theater, where I was also assistant directing, and I was teaching all over the Bay. And then I again had more problems with my medication and with my health, and had to call it. And I spent a year not doing, well, quote unquote, not doing anything, but I wasn't working. In that time, I saw that Harold Ramis started to exist.
Yeah.
So the story of my application, like, people made these movies that were like all elaborate and funny. I managed to drag myself up, put on makeup, put my hair like presentably. And so for my video, I'm literally sitting in front of the computer reading a script. And I didn't, because
this was for your bio video?
This was for my video cover letter. And I'm just sitting there just looking, and I'm like, "Hi, my name is Michaela Stewart, and this is like X, Y, and Z as to why you should let me be in your school." And later, I was told, when I saw other people's videos, people were like, you just sat there and talked. But then I was told that was very on brand for me. that I sort of am. I don't have this sort of like whimsical humor of being like, look at all these wacky characters I'm doing. For me, it's all very dialogue based, and it said cover letter. So I was like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to state my case. And I was like, they're not going to think I'm funny enough. Like, that's going to be the problem. And then when I met Trevor, he was like, we're so excited to have you here. And I realized that a big part of my appeal, I think, I mean, I don't know this for sure, was that I have a formal film school education. And so I think my formal film school education with my formal cover letter being formal. And they're like, oh, yes, well, this person is like a film educated individual, whereas
that's somebody you put in opposite like an Erickson.
Exactly. That is exactly it. Well, they're trying to build a balanced thing. They're like, oh, this girl's hella serious, and and there's Erickson, and Erickson and I get along super, super well.
Yeah, he's a great dude.
So like,
I had him on the show a few weeks back.
Yeah, so it's really funny. But if you look at us as like being polar opposites, he and I are like tight.
Yeah.
So it's everyone, they do try to balance it and create different people, and I'm also within my cohort. I wasn't the youngest, but I was on the younger side. I'm about to turn 26, and I graduated last fall, so that would have meant that I was 25. I turned 25 in the middle of last year. And I think the only people who were younger than me were like John and AJ and Erickson.
Yeah.
And then it started to get like progressively older.
See, I'm on the opposite. I'm the third oldest in my cohort. But they also now in what was it, in red? I can't remember if it's red or orange. Leva, she's 18. She's doing this as a gap year between high school and college.
Yeah.
So the range is
that
extensive.
I can't even imagine. Although it's funny because Harold Ramis reminds me a lot more of the film school program I was in high school.
Yeah.
Because that was more hands-on. Here's a camera, do whatever, like loose projects. It was a really amazing experience and opportunity, truly. And it's still around. It was tough too. Like they expected very high standards from us, and they taught us how to use equipment and how to edit. Unfortunately, with Final Cut Pro, which was no longer particularly useful afterwards.
The old one, yeah. I use the new one, so I am a Final Cut guy.
See,
and I used both, and the old one it used to be the better software, but now like 10's gotten a lot better overall. Like I actually prefer 10 over Premiere most of the time.
Yeah.
But
I honestly am not great at software. So when I started in high school, I was a junior, and like we were all about at the same level. And then people's strengths started to come out.
Yeah.
And like I am absolutely a director, absolutely, and a writer and a director, but like I would say more a director.
Yeah.
I consider leadership to be a stronger skill, and sort of more of an extroverted type A, like ideas person. And then when it comes down to the equipment, I'm very like, oh gosh, I can't, brain fog.
Farm that out to somebody else.
Well, and it's not because I don't care for it. I just don't, I'm someone who's like really bad at math, even though I wish I was better. Like I'm not proud of it, but my brain doesn't work that way. And I feel like that with equipment and editing.
In my term one final, I actually had one of the teachers that said, yeah, you can because I do a lot of the production work. I taught myself how to do like the run the camera, do all the editing, all that sort of thing, because I couldn't find reliable people to do it in DC. And over time, I met a few, but at least initially. But I taught myself that stuff, and the thing I found about it was, or that they told me in my final was, stop trying to do all that, and it's because there are always going to be better people at it that are out there that are easy to get, especially here in Chicago. I mean, with Columbia College, we've got so many that we can tap into.
Almost my entire crew on my final film were people from Columbia.
Yeah, it's like just don't even try and do it yourself. Like find somebody that can do it honestly better.
You got to know how to delegate.
Yeah,
for your sanity and for the quality of your film. I know how to edit. I'm not that good at like using Premiere, but I know the concept of editing film. I'm able to like use
L
the
cut,
language
J cut, where to put things. Yeah.
Well, and I'm able to communicate to an editor or a cinematographer what I want, whether or not I'm super good at cameras or super good at the software. you still have to know how these things work. You can't just be like, I want the shot to look good, fix it. You know, I know about all the aspects of production. Just you have to find people whose strength it is. And in high school and college, I had usually, all through high school and all through college, I worked with the same cinematographer pretty consistently. I worked with, in high school, there was a guy that I was friends with that was a really good cinematographer and a really good editor. So he and I worked together a lot. He wasn't a writer or director. So we were like, we can team up and do this. And then in in college, again, I had a similar kind of group of people that I would keep dragging around for stuff. So again, I ended up at Harold Ramis because I needed something to do. I was not putting out content. I was going to sketch writing class like once a week at UCB. And I was like, this isn't working. So I pled my case to them, forgot about it, and then got a phone call while I was in the middle of teaching.
The Julie call.
And I got into Orange, actually. I got into the first class.
Yeah.
And
nice.
I ended up deferring because I wasn't ready to go. Basically, they called with like 2 weeks. And I was like, I live in California. I think if I lived in Illinois or if I lived in Chicago, I would have been able to be like, oh, yeah, I can start now. But I was like, oh, man, I got stuff to do. And also, I had some more work lined up. And I was like, it's going to be a couple $1,000s more in my pocket if I wait.
Yeah.
So is that fine? And they were like, yeah. So that's how I ended up here because I needed another chance to sort of get it together and get back into filmmaking after I'd sort of had this big lull mentally in all ways. So I sort of needed to get to, pick up where I left off.
So beyond just getting you back into making stuff on a regular basis, did it kind of fill any gaps that were still missing? I mean, that's a hell of a pedigree as far as what you came in with, as far as training beforehand with high school and college. What did this actually wind up serving a purpose for you?
Because one of the things, so I was one of the only writer-directors at Chapman who were making comedies because people were trying to make festival darling,
Everybody tries to make the wank off art piece. They want to be the next Clockwork Orange or something like that.
And the movie that I became known for at school my junior year I made is a film called Men of the Hour, and it's about two guys who make a fake gay porno about Jesus. And And so that was the movie that really put me on the map of all the movies I made in college because people were like, what on earth? But nobody else was making movies like that.
Yeah.
And you make 3 movies you make a sophomore movie, junior movie, senior thesis. But like I was the only person not the only person making comedies, but I was the only woman.
Okay.
And so again, maybe not, maybe there was somebody in another class in my class, but I didn't know her personally. Anyway, the point is
very, very
there
limited
are very
run.
few.
Yeah.
And traditional film school does not teach you about comedy. There might be like comedy week in film studies, but I knew that I made comedic films, I wrote comedic films, and I didn't learn any of it formally.
Yeah.
And I also felt that the way that a BFA program is set up, it's very much like a conservatory. You stay in your lane. You're studying production, you are studying production. You're studying editing, you're studying editing. Like it's very, very specific. And I loved writing and I wrote every film that I made, but I didn't get any proper screenwriting training. So here I was like, I can get screenwriting training that I feel like I lacked. I can get more hands-on directing, and I can learn about comedy at a film school because that's what I do, and I didn't get that opportunity. Which
is so weird that film, like most college film programs, don't spend more time on comedy just because it is. I honestly think it's harder to do than drama. I mean, you see so many comedic acters that bridge over into drama, and but you see so many comedic actors that like bridge over into drama and do something. I mean, phenomenal with kind of their first pass at it, and it's one because they're good actors to begin with, but two because it takes so much more feel for timing and energy and playing off someone else and that sort of thing to get a comedy right that it makes drama easier, I think.
Oh, yeah. And I can tell you exactly why film schools are like that. Because dramatic films win festivals. Festivals having, students that win festivals is a marketing tool. And I mean, there was a guy that I was friends with who has been at the student Oscars twice. He makes animated, like sort of abstract animated movies. Shout out to Daniel Drummond, to anyone who's listening to this. But that being said, it's in their interest for you to churn out movies that are going to win things.
Right.
And for me, they're
You're
like
partially a marketing piece for the school.
Exactly. Yeah. And the way that Chapman at least functions is as a studio. Like, you know, we have 2 sound stages.
Yeah.
We have all these people, and like I said, the sort of stay in your lane situation. There's no room for experimentation. You pick your movie, you make your movie, you crowdfund for that movie, you make it and you put it into festivals, and it goes like that. Like there's no screwing around. So people who like made web series and stuff, they did that after they graduated because things were working, you know, on a production schedule.
Yeah.
And, you know, our teachers, the school was our producer. So it was a really interesting, it's really like a good real life prep situation, but it's also doesn't leave a lot of room for creativity. Like the movies that I made in college.
Which is sad to say because it's a creative medium and
yes.
you're not getting the chance to be creative.
Yes. So that's why I wanted to come here. I was like, there's a big aspect of my film education that's missing. And I wasn't getting work anyway.
Yeah.
So I was like, this will help me. I also thought that this would be particularly helpful networking. Coming to school here was the second time I'd ever been to the Midwest. And the first time was I was only here for 48 hours for a film festival. So I came once to like check out where I was going to live and then moved. Yeah. So I really, you know, for me, this was just sort of a life change to see if maybe we can get career stuff moving again. So, which I wish, but honestly, I wish I could say it had been more helpful. It has not been. Just real talk. I have had, you know, significant trouble finding work. And I'm actually about to move back to Los Angeles because I have more of a connected community there. And the friends that I do have there, graduated college, are now finally, the ones that did get work are now doing well enough that they've got their own projects that they can pull people into. And but it's like, you know, they say that it's hard, but like it's impossible. Yeah. And unfortunately I feel like I'm a pretty bad like mouthpiece for it right now, but you know, even talking to other people in my class and stuff, it's really challenging. And I'm also someone that's not all about like independent projects all the time. Like that, I mean, I do that, but it's not like, you know, I'm going to make a gritty web series, just me starting now, like the Ericksons of the world, as you mentioned, who are really industrious in the indie space. And I would love to work for a studio. Like I am okay working in an office. I mean, hopefully not forever, but like the sort of bigger Hollywood system, like I'm a sellout. I would do it. So you know, I'm kind of in a different place than some people, but I think we're all looking for different stuff to do. Yeah. And Chicago, I think that it's time for me to try a second shot at Los Angeles. We'll see if Dimitri Martin is hiring.
Well, and Lynn put it to me one time. She said, you know, it kind of, the classes wind up breaking out like a third. Like there's a third of the people that are going to go out of this and find something within like, you know, 3 to 6 months and just kind of hit the ground running. There's a third of each class that's going to be just kind of toiling for a few years and trying to figure out where to go from there. And then there's going to be a third that are just here and decide that this isn't the world they want to be in, or we're just here for the life experience and you're going to go back to the, you know, whatever random job they were doing beforehand or career path they were on.
Yeah, totally. And that's why I joke that I've been a film student forever.
Yeah.
Is because I have yet to really gain traction. And a big part of it, I know, is because I was out of the game for a little while because of dealing with health issues. And it's hard for me to look back on that as being a real situation, because I'll be like, oh my gosh, I've been out of film school for so long. And then I had a friend tell me like, well, you were kind of busy. Like you weren't just
stuff that you were doing.
You weren't just like watching TV. And I was, you know, teaching that whole time and doing stuff like that. I'm actually going home for I'll be home for most of July teaching.
Nice.
I'm teaching an acting for film workshop at the theater company I grew up at, so it's kind of a fun.
I started doing stuff like that with improv back in DC. So I actually had a workshop that I ran a couple times there, but the goal was eventually to like try and run it at improv festivals and stuff that my troops would get into, hopefully one day. And but it was improv and film, and it was talking about how people improvise in films and how they utilize that, the different styles of it. You know, is it completely improvised? Is it sketched out and then improvised within that?
Always get a clean take.
Yeah,
that's my advice. Get a clean take and then mess around.
That was my preferred one, which is kind of the almost Will Ferrell and Adam McKay school of thought, which is write the best script you can, go shoot that, and then use the extra time to try and come up with toppers on every line that you can get a better joke on.
They are actually my comedy icons.
Yeah.
Will Ferrell and Adam McKay. I love like every movie they've ever made.
Yeah.
And I think people have told me that they're surprised by that. And I'm like, no, I can quote every single word of Talladega Nights.
Yeah.
Unquestionably. And so I would love to be them, or like to have that style, like whatever it is that they do. For me, that's like the pinnacle of at least what I find funny.
Yeah.
It might not be what I can make. It might not be my own voice.
And that's the tough thing. Like, yeah.
Because I'm like, the movies that I make are not really like that necessarily, but I do think that they're, to me, like the funniest filmmakers out there.
I kind of wonder if that has to do with just how humor works in general. Like, it's the idea of trying to subvert expectations on what's the next word coming out of somebody's mouth is going to be. And the things that you can do are never going to feel surprising to you.
Yeah.
The same way that the weird stuff that somebody else does. Like, I feel like I can make comedy, but then I look at somebody like Chris Dritzis. I don't know if you know him and Red. He does like whacked out like Tim and Eric style stuff, and that's but my brain doesn't work that way. I can't think that way, but I think stuff's hysterical to watch because it's so left of what I would be able to put together. So I wonder if that has something to do with it too. Like you're able to be really funny in your own right. I kind of wonder if like Will Ferrell and Adam McKay think their stuff is the best stuff, or if they have something else that's left to center that they bend towards.
Totally, that's really interesting. I've never thought of it like that, because like innately my voice is going to be different because I'm a woman and I'm younger, and I for whatever. I mean, I'm not them, so my voice is going to be different. But it is interesting to think, like, you're never going to sound like the people that you think are funny.
Yeah.
And if you did, how boring.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be like Will Ferrell and Adam McKay too.
Right.
I mean, I would love to work for them, but I, would still want to be the first of me.
Yeah. You have to carve your own path out of it to make it past that. Otherwise, because there are those people that are just kind of like a poor man's blank, version of whatever actor or director, writer that you can think of.
Yeah.
So what other influences? So Will Ferrell, Adam McKay. What else? What else is in your viewing your top list?
Oh, and my top lists. Well, as far as I find that like other comedians are not really what inspires my writing. So, I mean, I can go into like comedians that I find funny, but it might be more interesting for me to like tell you what influences me.
Yeah.
Unless you just want a list of stand-ups that I like. But I've been listening to a lot of Nicole Byer's new podcast, Why Won't You Date Me? It's so funny. It's such a hot mess.
Have you watched Nailed It at all?
Yes.
That show's hysterical.
Watch all of Nailed It.
New episodes coming soon.
Oh yeah, I know. Actually, well, I had to just watch all.
When this gets posted, I think they'll be out already. So check out Nailed It on Netflix.
I watched the new season of it, and Queer Eye got renewed at the same time, and I've already seen the second season of Queer Eye in one night. I
haven't watched any of it yet. The
so
new
good.
one.
It's like people joke that it's what America needs, and it is. Like, it's funny and it's heartwarming and it's inspiring, and in a way that like they like a lot of makeover shows are like, you're a mess and we're gonna fix you.
Yeah.
And then this is like, you're a mess, but here's why. We're gonna fix you together. We're gonna collaborate. And then you look at your own life and you're like, yeah, I too could like use better shampoo or whatever it is that the thing is. But they're just really amazing people, the guys that host it. But anyway, I'd rather talk about like what inspires my writing, because it's dialogue that real people that I'm friends with have said. Almost every movie I've ever made has had significant amounts of dialogue that I did not come up with.
It's just real conversations that you actually had.
Yes.
And yeah.
I've actually had to ask people for permission because I'm like, this is right out of your mouth.
I'm stealing your essence and making this. Yeah.
Well, my senior thesis film in college was a movie called 5 Days Straight, which was about a group of students who were stuck on a birthright trip in Israel. And my friends on that trip were so ridiculous. And my friends I studied abroad in Cannes my sophomore year of college. Got to intern at the film festival.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was the secretary for a distribution company that distributed horror films. And so I sat there and I could speak enough French to call and ask for more croissants and tea. And then I would sit there and I'd be, hi, we're Imagination Worldwide. Would you like to watch this clip? Here's some 3D glasses. And just sit there. But I worked in Cannes.
It counts.
It counts. But my group of friends there were also really crazy. My friends I grew up as a theater person too, so all my friends were really crazy. And so much of my comedy comes from my real life. And I think that that's either how I process things, or I'm like, you just can't write this.
Yeah.
I can't think of some of these things. And I recently showed that one of the people that that 5 Days Straight is based on, like the people in that group, one of the people moved to Chicago recently. And I was like, have you seen the movie? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, we're going to watch it. And you have to promise that you'll still be friends with me. And he watches it and he goes, oh my God, I really did say those things. Oh my God, you even got him to wear the same jacket as me. And I was like, oh my God, please don't be mad. And he was like, no, that's eerie.
Yeah.
And like people thought it was funny. So I guess I like, God, I just like so many same comedians. I was thinking about John Mulaney today every time I go past the Salt and Pepper Diner because it's right where I live.
I played that for somebody like a week and a half ago. The audio clip from Salt and Pepper Diner. The what's new, pussy?
Yeah, I crack up every single time I hear it. I've also been listening to a lot of Cameron Esposito and Rhea Butcher. They are they're a married lesbian couple who do a lot of stand up about that, and they tour together.
Did you watch their show? That's one that I need to see. It didn't get picked up again, but
I wasn't. I love their stand up. Wasn't obsessed with the show.
Oh, really?
But it was one of those situations where, if you remember any of John Mulaney's like failed sitcom, it was because they tried to take a stand up and turn it into a show.
Right.
And it's like, we've seen this, and that's what was wrong with that too. Because
right.
I was like, oh, I've heard this bit before.
Yeah. He needs. I think he needs a sketch show because the stuff that he's done that I really liked was Oh Hello and SNL stuff that he wrote was.
I'm still laughing about Lobster Diner.
Yeah, Lobster Diner, and
I'll never get over it.
Stefan is amazing, and he was rewriting that all the way up until the moment it went up, which is why Bill Hader's cracking up on that.
I know. I've heard like every story about it. I love being in. Like, I know people like Stefan. I really do.
Yep.
And it's just such a wonderful, and I quote that all the time too. If I ever say this place has everything, I'll be like, this place has everything. Broken glass. I thought of that because I went to a nightclub once where there really was broken glass on the floor. And I was like, oh my God, there's a Stefan thing about this. This club has everything, guys. It's broken glass.
Anytime I read a club description of any kind, I read it in Stefan's voice. It's the hottest new club.
Yeah. It's just called This Noise. I'm friends with people who are like that. And friends, the friends that I have that live in LA that are all like, my boyfriend is a DJ and he's playing it, whatever. And his name is something incomprehensible. And my friend is also dating a guy who is named something else, and I'm like, oh God, I've been in the Midwest for too long. I don't understand. But yeah, and when I say those comedians, that's just what I've been listening to lately. I feel like I've named 3 stand-up comedians when I listen to bajillions of them. But those are like the podcasts I've been into. Yeah, I've been very, I was trying to think, I've been very occupied with the process of moving lately. So that's been kind of taking up a lot of mental space.
It's an easy thing to just put on and listen to while you're executing 100 other tasks. I listened to a ton of podcasts when I used to have to drive to work. Like that was the easy time to just put them on and, I could get through 2 or 3 a day.
I actually discovered a lot of stand-up comedians when I would commute to LA for an hour and a half back and forth. I would put it on Pandora.
Oh, like I would pick comedian. Choose
like
somebody
I'd pick a comedian that I liked, and then I would just like discover a bunch of people that I love that are a little bit harder to come by, like James Adomian.
Yeah,
I really like. I'm trying to think who else I like discovered through the Pandora stations, but I would write them down in my phone or in a notebook so that I would remember.
Yeah,
because that was just when I was in college.
That's just the algorithm just helping you find stuff because it's all based on.
Oh, okay, so I like this person. Now I'm going to listen to like this. Oh, my favorite stand-up is Patton Oswalt.
Okay.
By the way, sorry, I was just processing through that. I'm like, what channel would I start this with? No.
I will say most Patton Oswalt characters that I've seen him play, like acting out, haven't done it for me. Like I think the ones that I've liked the most, I like him when he's animated. Because his voice is much more animated than he is as a person. So like Ratatouille's fantastic. Have you seen Happy?
No.
Happy on Sci-Fi, I think it is.
Although I should, because I do love me some SVU.
And it is dark and it is cracked up and weird and funny. And he's fantastic as the little flying unicorn.
I for me it's just a stand-up. Like I tried watching AP Bio. I wasn't obsessed with it.
I could not get. I found Shrink through watching AP Bio because I saw all the ads for AP Bio all over everything, and I went to watch it on NBC.com, and I was just this doesn't do anything. Like I'd watched 2 episodes, and I was like, I can't deal with this. But the commercial breaks on every single one of those were for Shrink, and so I jumped over and watched Shrink. Have you watched any of that one?
No.
That is like one of the best shows I've seen, and that's produced in Chicago by a bunch of Chicago people. Like they're people that we've worked with in this area that are in that show. Worth checking out. Well, beyond that, so what are you working on now? Are there any pet projects, anything that you're either currently writing or currently producing that you're wanting to see come to fruition in the next year, 2 years, 5 years?
Well, there's some stuff. Well, right now, Shakespeare Open Mic is, I'll be hearing back from festivals in the end of August. I joke sometimes that, I'm very used to applying for festivals, and so I always joke like, Shakespeare Open Mic not coming to a festival near you, because you get so many rejections, and you're just like, oh, fine. But when I have gone into festivals, my films have done really well.
Yeah,
it just has to be
the right film and the right festival.
Well, and I'm hoping that Shakespeare Open Mic does well because it's only 8 minutes, so it's a lot more programmable than some of my other stuff. But so working on Shakespeare Open Mic's festival situation, the project that I started working on in Kat's class got really big, and in terms of like, oh, it's a script, but it should also be a graphic novel. Oh, but it could be a regular novel. Oh, but it could be this, and this, because it's like young adult. It's called now it's called Rose Quartz, but it used to be called Nevermore. And it's something I've been working off and on since college. But it's basically, the premise is it's a bunch of people that work for a children's party company. And they play characters of the children's party company, but their lives are, troubled.
Okay.
But I find, in all of our discussions about like, oh, what do you think that you're good at? I'm like young adult apparently seems to be what people are telling me that I'm good at. And I think that was a very like weird and dramatic time in my life.
Yeah.
High school, like just the people I was friends with and just like what I was doing was so weird. And
you have an odd imprint that's different from everyone else's.
College, I was just working. I was school, I was doing school stuff. And in high school, I was like doing theater and in this weird program. And I, had these friends that were creative, brilliant, upsetting genius, all over the map kind of people. And so that time, I think I have a lot more to mine from.
Mm-hmm.
So some people, I didn't realize that until people were like, yeah, I think young adult might be your area. And I really like writing, like dumb. It's like my drama is always very like, people with mental illnesses or like, but in a thoughtful way.
Right.
And my comedy is like sex jokes. And there's no, I have yet to make a movie that doesn't have a dick joke in it. Even Shakespeare
Even the
Open
dramatic
Mic.
stuff. Yeah.
I've never made a dramatic film, except for when I was 16, we had to make self-portrait films.
Mm-hmm.
And oh boy, is that angsty. It's like me, and I'm trying to figure out what to do for my self-portrait, and everything I try doesn't work. Like I draw and I draw and I draw, and then it cuts, the sketchbook is empty. Or like I take a picture of myself, but the frame is empty.
Yeah.
And I can't write anything about myself because I have no identity. Oh gosh, the angst. And I was really depressed.
You're like an emo song in a person.
Yes. Well, I mean, I did have clinical depression, but I was like, I forgot about the extra dramatic part of that. I interviewed a bunch of my friends. I had them go into a sound booth and just talk about me for 5 minutes and their impressions of me. And they all said really, really nice things. And so me being angsty is overlaid with my friends saying nice things about me that I can't hear and understand.
Aww.
And that is the most dramatic film I've ever made. And I think that I needed to like just get that one out.
Yeah.
It's actually not bad. Mm-hmm. The premise, like describing it, you're like, this is the dumbest thing in the world. But you watch it, you're like, this is interesting. This is vaguely deep. But everything else I've made has been like...
I want to make a film sometime that somebody describes as vaguely deep. So I can put that on the actual like poster for it. Vaguely deep.
That's something that you
Variety.
could put on, oh my gosh, any drama that I make or write, because I always have to throw in like a little bit, because Rose Quartz is pretty dramatic, because I was told it was a comedy with dramatic elements, and then upon further review, I was told that it was a drama with comedic elements. Between Kat and Mariano, just ask each one of them; they'll tell you it's something different.
Yeah.
And they were just such amazing influences on it too. It wouldn't be where it is without them. Right now, my goal with it is I needed to put it away for a minute because I worked on it for 2 sessions last year.
Yeah.
And then now I'm reading part of it. I'm like, oh, this is dumb. So I have to like fix it. And then I am interested in the graphic novel thing. I think that'd be really cool. And I think it would be a little easier to deal with. Like Kat was talking about different ways to go into it because of the nature of it. Could be a great seller. It could be a really hard sell.
Right.
So, but we were both like, graphic novels are hot right now.
Yeah.
Teenagers love drama.
And so much of that is making now its way to film. I mean, Walking Dead came from graphic novels first and foremost.
Yeah. And it's like it's something that it has a lot of heart, and it speaks, to people with PTSD and people in the LGBT community, and also just like how ridiculous the theater world is.
Yeah.
And it's just, a lot of people have told me that it strikes a nerve, and they're like, oh yeah, this is real. I know these people. And that is always my goal. Yeah. To have people be like, oh my God, I know that person. Yeah. And that's the Stefans of the world.
It's that universality through specificity.
Yes.
It's being super specific to make it somehow universal that everybody's going to be able to, I know somebody exactly like that guy. It's almost exactly like that girl, or exactly like that dog, or whatever it is.
It's truly one of my strongest, it's one of my biggest weaknesses and biggest strengths, because I do things that are very specific. On the flip side, people are going to know it's about them. Yeah. So I've like made movies and been like, no one can see this. Shakespeare Open Mic has the main character is based on an intern that I had who was still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and the other 2 characters are based on other teachers that I've worked with. And that really happened. We really did go to, for people who are listening, the premise of Shakespeare Open Mic is there's a couple of theater teachers who are, having a hard time with teaching, and then they go out to a bar, they get drunk, and they perform Shakespeare at an open mic. And this was actually performed at it was performed live as well. Yeah. So it's a fun thing, but it almost happened in real life.
Yeah.
We didn't let the woman go up and do it, but it was discussed.
It'll be worth a shot. Well, if just wrapping up, because I know you got a heart out. If people want to track you down on social media, follow along, see this stuff as it comes to fruition,
Yes.
find out where Shakespeare Open Mic ends up getting in for festivals, because it will.
Yes.
Where can they find you?
Yes. All right. So you can find me on Twitter at Cinema Michaela, and that's cinema as you would think it's spelled. Michaela again is Michaela.
Mm-hmm.
So my website is also cinemamichaela.com.
Nice. Consistent branding.
Yeah, exactly. Except for my Instagram, which is m.m.stewart. But
Did you try getting Cinema Michaela? You can change it.
I don't want it to be. I just like because here's the thing, my Instagram is private.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want this to be part of my branding.
And yet you're putting it on the podcast.
Because like if anybody, I'll tell you why. Because if anybody from school wants to follow me, they're more than welcome to.
Fair enough.
And because it's all just pictures of dogs, guys. Like,
so go see pictures of dogs.
so go see pictures of dogs. Check out cinemamichaela.com. Check out Cinema Michaela on Twitter. That's actually where I'm the most active.
Nice.
And yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Let me get this cake. I'ma turn into a roster. Early retirement. I'll be flying to Oaxaca. Chasing Levi.
That was Michaela Stewart. Thank you to Michaela and to the Harold Ramis Film School and the Second City staff for their help. The music on this week's episode was Believe Me by Piff Tannen. You can find more of Piff's music and his excellent film work at mangocitymedia.com. This show was recorded and edited by me, Tony Lazzeroni. If you want to hear more from me, my classmates, teachers, and a few special guests, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions or comments, send us an email at filmstudentpod@gmail.com or find us on Twitter and Instagram at filmstudentpod. And be sure to check out some of my and my classmates' work at filmstudentpod.com. See you all next week. Class dismissed.
Work to make shit look easy. And I can do it in my sleep, believe me. Piff.